No Country 1430 AM and 1073 FM WRDN. This is the WRDN Morning Farm Report. I'm Brian Winnikins. Joining us this morning is Josh Linville. He is with Stone X, and we are going to be chatting fertilizer this morning. Thank you to our newsmaker sponsors, including AMPI, Compeer Financial, also Synergy Co-op, Anibis Silo, Osteoplastics, along with Alcivia Co-op. And Josh, well, thank you for joining us today. Well, the big thing with farmers, especially here in the upper Midwest, has been the fertilizer and the prices. Mm-hmm. And really, this has been something that's kind of been building well before the Ukraine-Russian conflict here. This was something that was actually building last year, wasn't it?
Yeah, this is something actually, for me, the pivot point of this entire thing started way back in the summer of 2020. And in fact, it all really started August of 2020. It was during that derecho event, because before that we had grain price, corn was what, 350, 375. Fertilizer prices were of course very, very low, and very, very quickly, not only did we see grain prices rallied over 6, but then we also had big government COVID checks that went out to the farm gate. So demand for fertilizer went from next to nothing to phenomenal in a very short amount of time. And from that point on, it seems like it's been black swan event after black swan event.
Well, let's talk about, I guess, the big one I know one of the big ones for us here in Western Wisconsin, nitrogen. What are some of the things we're seeing right now with nitrogen?
Yeah, and a lot of them have to do more with overseas than they do have to be domestically. And that's something we got to keep in mind. And I'm definitely not trying to tell anybody what to do, how to do it, right? But we do need to keep in mind that we are part of a global market, whether we realize it or not. Things that happen halfway around the world absolutely matters to us here. So when we see the Chinese government that is restricting and banning the export of phosphate and urea, that affects us here at home. When we have the Russian invasion of Ukraine, which causes most of the world to shut them out, and we lose all their exports, that matters to us here at home. Those things reduce the amount of supply. Demand doesn't change. Prices go up.
Talking with Josh Linville, he's with Stone X, talking about some of the fertilizer issues going on. I know, Josh, there was that the export, I think it was with Mosaic, where they were, there were the tariffs. Is that something that's gone away now?
No, unfortunately, that's still in place. Mosaic had called for a countervailing duty case against Moroccan and Russian imports. And that was the thing that really started this whole thing off. That was late June 2020. That was subsequently approved. It would have been late winter, early spring 21. Now, we've seen a lot of pushback. We've had a lot of the industry now, whether that be retail organizations, farmer associations, corn associations, DC is starting to get on it. All these places are going back and they're pushing Mosaic and saying, you need to drop this because the cost of phosphate is so insanely high. The market today is nothing like what it was back then. But we're not seeing that change. We're not seeing Mosaic willing to give that up. And from their perspective, who can blame them? I mean, if you can knock out two of your biggest importers of phosphate, you knock out that competition, you control the market that much more.
Obviously, one of their competitors in Russia, they're knocked themselves out here. So you would think maybe that they would now say, okay, well, we'll kind of do our part here because of everything else going on. But I'm surprised that they are they're really stuck in wanting to try to keep this going.
Yeah, that's what a lot of the market had been hoping, that, hey, they would take the cues of what's going on around the world and take the opportunity to step back and say, okay, we're going to drop this. We're going to request it to be reversed. But that action has not happened.
Talk a little bit about potash market. Obviously, again, we have stuff going on overseas, Russia and Belarus, big producers, obviously with the conflict going on. Well, we're not getting much from them anymore.
Right. And here's one of the things people kind of get confused about. When you sit there and look at where all the imports of potash come into the U.S. market, the vast majority, 85 to 90% of our imports come from Canada. So the idea is there's not even that much that comes from Russia and Belarus, right? We're talking single digits percentage come from those two countries. But the problem is, again, we got to back out to the global scale. We got to look at what they mean to the entire world market. And when you look at that, those two countries account for around 40+% of the global export trade of potash.
Wow.
So if you remove their tons from the world market, their normal buyers aren't just going to throw their hands up in the air and say, well, no, I guess we're going without potash. Guess where they go for their potash needs? They're going to start going to places like Canada and start competing with us. And that means prices go up.
So the another big concern have been for some producers. Okay, we ordered it, we paid for it last year, but they may not be getting it. Have you heard of any reports, Josh, of supply shortages where farmers they may have bought it, but they're not going to be receiving it?
Thankfully, no. Now, I have been extremely heightened alert going into the spring season. I have been more nervous about the logistics going into this spring than any of the 20 springs I've been a part of. And it's because the river system, they can flood or go low level very, very quickly and stop that flow. Rail service, of course, has been very slow through the winter time. And now we've got the UP situation that's coming up. Truckers, we are losing truckers by the thousands. These guys can go make so much more money and be home every night to be home with their wife and kids. It's the logistics have really, really spooked me. Luckily, it seems like everything has worked out pretty well, but we are far from done with spring season.
Talking with Josh Linville, he's with Stone X, talking about fertilizer. You mentioned the UP situation. What apparently the Union Pacific is having some issues. Tell us about what's happening.
As I understand it, the UP is very backed up on shipments. They're getting backed up on rail service, things like that. And so the step that they have taken is to go out and say, we are going to restrict the number of private cars that can ship on the UP rail line. That is their way of slowing traffic and allowing them to move their cars through the system and get back to on time. Unfortunately, when we look at it from a fertilizer perspective, a lot of this fertilizer runs on private equipment. CF is one. They put out a letter to a lot of their clientele stating we could lose upwards of 20% of our rail fleet because of what the UP has done. And it could not happen at a worse time. I mean, literally, if you look at the calendar, there could not be a worse time for this to happen, right in the middle of the heart of our spring. So this is, I will say this is new enough. I don't quite have my head around what this could obviously ultimately means, but I think we all know what it means in the end. It means it's going to be that much harder. It means that product's going to be that much tighter, which ultimately pushes prices up.
So, and because they're running behind, then they're not. And I guess I was surprised when I first received your email about this, that they're having an issue just even staying on time themselves, and they're not really able to maybe forward this out to CP or Canadian National or BNSF. They're just saying nothing, huh?
I mean, that's the problem. When you think about it, you're talking about very few rail lines out there that I don't think they work together, obviously, as much as they want to, but that's not real great. I mean, it's not like you're going to see the BNSF start putting a lot of their locomotives on UP, because then all of a sudden that means they get backed up on their service. It's a capitalistic thing, and they're in it for themselves. And yeah, I just don't think we see that possibility that some of the other railroads step up and can make a lot of the difference.
And talking with Josh Linville with StoneX. So I guess, Josh, what do farmers do? I mean, if hopefully they're not going to have those supply shortages. At least they've gotten everything. But what do we look at here down the road? I mean, as spring planting goes on, what are some things farmers need to be kind of thinking about trying to do?
One of the big things, and I've said this all the way through winter on a lot of these farmer presentations, the shows I've spoken at, things like that. One of my big things has always been to end it with saying, we need to be talking more with our supplier, not less. And the reason I say that, when prices get up to where they're at today, let's face it, we all get angry. I come from a farming family in Northwest Missouri, and it's not real fun. Thanksgiving and Christmas wasn't real fun talking about the markets. Easter isn't going to be real fun talking about the markets. We're all upset. Every time grain prices go up, everything else goes up by that much more. Everybody's got their hand out. And our natural inclination is to just shut down. Stop having conversations. Just say, you know what? I don't even want to talk to anybody. I'm just going to do my thing. I'll show up when I show up. That's dangerous this year. With the issues we've got with logistics and supply just-in-time models and things like that, we are better suited to have more conversations with our suppliers so they have an idea of what you need. You don't have to buy it today. But if you can sit there and say, I'm going to need this much at this time frame, they can plan on it and try and put things in place and be ready for it. My biggest fear is that too much of the market waits until the absolute last minute, shows up on the doorstep and say, I need my DAP, I need my potash, I need my nitrogen. And the retailer says, I'm sorry, we don't have it. You were scared of the high price. We're petrified of the high price. We didn't put in place for you because you didn't talk to us.
And that is something, I guess, that I've never thought of, that we have to work with those suppliers, because they have to order it to be able to get it. They don't want to be stuck with it if suddenly everybody says, well, I'm not going to buy any because it's too high. So they might even be waiting, which messes up the supply chain even more.
Yeah, it's dangerous. A lot of us were in the market back in '08, and a lot of people have drawn correlations to 2008. We saw prices move up like they did, and then they just completely fell out of bed. And a lot of people got hung with really high priced product. We lost a lot of companies out there because they just went under because of what they lost. And people have swore never again. I had friends, I had family, I had people I knew very, very closely lost their jobs because of that situation. Everybody's sworn we're not going to let that happen.
Wow. So again, farmers, again, talk with your suppliers as well to keep them in the loop too, because they also need to know. Some great advice, Josh. Well, again, Josh, we appreciate you joining us this morning.
Yes, sir. Anytime.
That is Josh Linman. He is with StoneX, and this is the WRDN Morning Farm Report.